Yeah, welcome to this webinar about Korea on the 1st of July. My name is Steinar Murud and I'm leading the UPF chapter here in Norway, and I will be the moderator this evening. Our title for this evening's webinar is Korea, Two Nations, One People, How Humanitarian Projects Can Contribute to Peace and Development. Originally, we were thinking about having this webinar last Friday on the 25th of June, because that is the day of the outbreak of the Korean War 71 years ago. At that time, Norway responded to the UN call and gave medical and humanitarian aid in support of the UN force, helping more than 90,000 patients. There were 623 Norwegian men and women that served in the hospital. Of course, we know the result of the tragic war. An armistice between North and South was signed, leaving the country divided along the 38th parallel. Many people hoped and believed that this division would be temporarily, hoping that an election could bring the people together again under one government. However, this did never happen, and during the decades, the two states have grown further and further apart from each other, eventually into a situation that there is no other border in the world that is comparable to the border at the 38th parallel between North and South Korea. No two states are as strictly separated as North and South Korea, despite the fact that it is one people that share a common history of 4,000 years. I believe that in this long perspective, 70 years is a short time, and I really hope that a way will open for a peaceful reunification of the people, and that it will take place sooner rather than later. So during the 70 years that has passed, many ways and strategies have been tried to find a way to peace, to development, denuclearization, and reunification of the peninsula. At times it was very promising, like a warm sunshine development, and other times the relationship was like cold ice. So to recapture, during Kim Il-jung's presidency 20 years ago, we experienced a good dialogue resulting in cultural and family exchanges. Under the following president, Lee Myung-bak, the atmosphere hardened and the relationship became worse. But back in 2018, we saw again hopeful signs of cooperation during the Olympic Games, where North and South Korea participated with a joint ice hockey team. And during the former US President Trump, we saw historical meetings taking place between the US President Trump, South Korea's President Moon, and DPRK's leader Kim Jong-un. These meetings were very hopeful for a long time, but again, it seems now that the relationship has cooled down. So many ways have been tried to deal with North Korea, from sanctions and threats to cultural exchange, industrial cooperation, and various forms of aid. The way to peace is not only through political negotiations. Alternative ways can often be of complementary help. So this evening, we want to learn from the experiences of two organizations that are doing humanitarian projects in North Korea. Humanitarian aid is like a universal value. It is not controversial, everybody supports it. But how is such projects run in a closed country like North Korea? How do the local people respond to the aid, and does it help to better the relationship between North Korea and the outside world? I hope we can hear and learn more about this now. So before we start, I just want to share some information about the program. We will first listen to the presentations from our speakers. These will be followed by some prepared questions to them from the moderator. And after that, we will open for questions from the audience. And finally, there will be a short concluding remarks. So if you do have questions, please click on the Q&A button at the bottom menu and write your question, and we will do our very best to answer them. So with this introduction, I want to introduce the first speaker, and that is Mr. Roald Føreland. He is the director of the Christian organization Evangelical Orient Mission, Evangelisk Orient Mission. Since 2011, his organization has been running agricultural projects in North Korea in cooperation with the Christian Friends of Korea. So Føreland has first-hand experience from North Korea and the projects, and now we look forward to hear your presentation, Mr. Føreland. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much for letting me participate in this interesting group of people here, and thank also for letting me getting to know you as an organization. I have read a little bit about it on the internet, and it seems like a very valuable work you are doing for peace around the world. So I will try to share screen here, and I have a PowerPoint presentation that I kind of rephrased the subject here, that it's been some kind of a motto for our organization, that friendship breaks down enemy images. Maybe that's another way of saying humanitarian projects, contributions to peace and development. And we are just quite a small organization, but we have been able to work together with a bigger organization which has some history of working in North Korea. So our motivation is from a Christian perspective. We are a Christian organization and motivated from the Bible, that where Jesus said, among many things, he said, "You are the light of the world," in Matthew 5. And one of the basic principles of the teachings of Christ is, I was in need of food and you gave it to me. I was in need of drink and you gave it to me. Whatever you did to the least of these, my brothers, you did to me. And this is very applicable to the situation for our project in North Korea. So we call the project Hope for North Korea, and we have the partners is an American organization called Christian Friends of Korea, and this organization consists of old Korean missionaries. Many of them lives in North Carolina, and they are they used to live in South Korea, most of them, but they have this calling to reach out to the people of North Korea. And you see the logo, it's a unified Korea, and it's the cross in it. So it's a kind of a, one might think that this was a provocative kind of logo, but we have been able to have this logo since 1995 on everything that has been delivered there, and I will show you as in the progress of this presentation. So maybe that's also a question to Red Cross. You also have the cross in your logo. So actually we think that many times that the North Koreans oppose religion, but we have been able to have this. It goes back to Billy Graham, a world famous evangelist, Christian leader that visited Kim Il-sung in 1992. And at that time, it was very closed, even more closed than the last decade. Now it's totally closed, but the last year, of course, with COVID-19, but at this time, in the beginning of the 90s, it was very closed. And it was quite a controversy when Billy Graham visited Kim Il-sung. Billy Graham's wife went to a school in Pyongyang. She was a daughter of China missionaries. So that's a background of it. And we hear that Kim Il-sung's mother was a Christian. Well, the project we are having is food and clean drinking water, basically. We have during the last years delivered more than 200 greenhouses. And here you see one of the greenhouses. It's quite simple, ones with plastic. And there is one person is responsible for this greenhouse. And we also deliver seeds, and I have seeds here, and this also explains how to grow the seeds, both in Korean and in English. So I think 60% of the people in North Korea are peasants, so they basically know how to grow it, and like to pay special attention to this type of seeds. It's something called rudebagga. I don't know if you're familiar with this vegetable, but it was very famous in Norway during the Second World War. A lot of people survived eating rudebagga. It's very good, a lot of proteins and a very good vegetable. Here is a tuberculosis hospital. They still have a large percentage of people with tuberculosis, and we are involved in the food production and clean drinking water, but the Christian Friends of Korea, our cooperative organization, they work together with the Ministry of Health, and one of their objects is to fight TB. So and our small part of it is to place greenhouses close by to those TB hospitals. So you know, we always have this question: how can we help the people of North Korea without supporting the government? Because that's quite important to us, that we don't kind of support the government, but we like to help the people. And one of the ways we have done it, and we feel quite strongly about that when we place those greenhouses next to the hospitals, the vegetable produced there go to the patients. We see that we visit 4 times a year, and we see that is what is happening. Here is one of the guy who started, the board member who started this whole thing. Here is in front of a huge monument in Pyongyang. I don't know if many of you have been to Pyongyang, but this is kind of a symbol of almost like the political religion of North Korea. And here is Oyvind. He's a carpenter. He's in front of a water supply system. It's the first greenhouse, and here you see the friendship idea that we work together with the North Koreans. And even in the middle of there, you see a guy with a kind of a cowboy hat that's an American. And we feel that's especially strong because kind of America has been the main enemy, but now they come as friends, and this is very positive. One of the key words is self-sustainability. Not only we want to give people food, we want to help them to produce their own food, and that's all about teaching. We have annual visits, and we help with clean drinking water. This is a manual water pump because there are so little electricity in Korea, and so that's why we have this manual water pump. Here you see the CFK logo on everything delivered. Christian Friends of Korea. I think that's quite an interesting picture, because even on an ambulance, this is a small city very far away from Pyongyang, and this is very, very few cars there, and this is an ambulance that bringing people to the hospital, and they have the logo of a Christian organization. It's quite incredible. I think even in Norway it would be difficult to have some sort of a commercial on an ambulance. So this was removed after some times, but it was there for many years. Here you see a satellite photo of Southeast Asia. I guess it's familiar to many of you guys. You see Japan here, and familiar, and China here, and there you have South Korea, and you have Seoul as a big light, and all of this dark area here is North Korea, and here is Pyongyang. So this illustrates, well, it shows that Korea has very little electricity, but it also shows some sort of darkness in many ways. Those horrible pictures we saw, this is way back from the situation in the 90s, but we also see malnutrition today. The girl in the red in front of this picture, she is 10 years old, and this is a picture I took myself. I believe she looks like she's 5 maybe, but she is actually 10 years old, and she's not starving, as you can see, but that's one of the consequences of malnutrition, is that you look much younger. So here is the roads. There's big 4 lanes roads, but there's very, very few cars. Here you have just some pictures from Korea, and it is a very typical picture. In every office, every private home, there are these pictures of Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and here's a situation where the leader of Christian Friends of Korea is talking to the director of the hospital, and a representative from Ministry of Health always follows us and also works as an interpreter and a guide. So here you see on a small scale, breaking down the enemy image. We really get to be good friends with these people, and so this is here you see one of the really large and nice, very expensive greenhouses also. So we have all kind of different greenhouses that we have delivered, and many times, well, all of the times we put up this poster that is given to the glory of God and in friendship by, well, some donors that we put in there. This is the last picture on this presentation. It shows a group of people in the city of Haeju, and it is the Good Friday, 3-4 years ago. I was there, and it was 2 degrees outside. No, it was -2 degrees outside, and it was 2 degrees inside the hotel building. No electricity. And there I took this photo 7 o'clock in the morning with a statue of Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and all these people in front of me sweeping the ground. And it's almost like a religious act. They came there in the morning, bowing down to the statues, and then starting to sweep the ground. Then they came groups over and over again. And it was quite, it was very strange to see these many people to kind of worship these statues. So, but we believe that we see that we want to be friends with the Korean people, and even have the logo here. That this is the one that we use when we travel in Korea. This is a few highlights of the work I'm doing, and it's a very, in a micro, small way, we try to be part of this. So I don't know if I went over time now, but thank you for attention.
Excuse me. That was perfect. Absolutely, time-wise, and also a very interesting presentation, giving impressions about how it is on the, what shall I say, grassroots at the ground in Korea. So thanks for sharing. I do have some questions, but we will take them afterwards. So after this, we will move on to our next presenters, and that is Mr. Torben Bjørke Henriksen. And Torben Bjørke Henriksen is senior advisor for Asia for the Norwegian Red Cross, and he has visited North Korea more than 20 times, and I'm sure he is among the Norwegians with most practical experience and knowledge about North Korea. So we are very excited to hear about your projects and experiences. So Mr. Henriksen, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, and thanks not at least for inviting me, and thanks to you, Steinar, and Universal Peace Federation for also the good timing in between the European Football Championship. I think it was a good timing to have it on the 1st of July. So that was wise. And I'm also very happy to learn about Evangelisk Orientmission. I'm not sure about the English name, but well, you can just jump in.
We can just call it the Evangelical Orient Mission. So we normally we only have the Norwegian word of it on it, but Evangelical Orient Mission would be an English name.
Okay, thank you very much. And as Roald already has shown some pictures, I could say that those of you who are expecting a PowerPoint presentation, you might be disappointed. But I think the pictures shown by Roald already is quite telling also about at least what the Red Cross is doing in the country. I will come back to that. But just to give you a backdrop on what we have been doing I say both DPRK and North Korea. So, but anyhow, it's the same country. So the Red Cross has been working also since 1995 when the country opened up for international humanitarian development programs and humanitarian support. So at that time, the International Red Cross was allowed to open an office in Pyongyang, and since that time, the cooperation with our counterpart, the DPRK Red Cross Society, which is its full name, meaning the North Korean Red Cross, has been developed both on a personal level, but also operationally. For me, as also mentioned by you, Steinar, I think it's almost 30 times now I've been visiting North Korea, but I have to admit I've lost count. But I started visiting the country back in 2003, already also mentioned, and that the situation at that time was quite different politically, at least between two Koreas. This was more or less at the end of the Sunshine Policy. But at that time we had already worked in the country for 8 years, supporting the country with first and foremost, I would say, in kind, as we call it, humanitarian support in terms of medicines, agriculture support, health support, water and sanitation, as the humanitarian needs were immense, and also the fact that we had quite limited information about the countryside and situation in outside of Pyongyang in general. I would like to pull as the topic of this webinar is also how to contribute to also peace and development, also between the two Koreas. I want to mention a project that unfortunately didn't succeed as we planned, but I believe still it was a good initiative, and also a project that could be pulled out of the drawer when the political situation allows. In 2003, 2004, and a few years later, we managed to have the two Korean Red Cross national societies to work together on a tree planting project, a very symbolic project. Planting trees, as you know, is not dangerous, it's not political. You have the symbolic idea of a tree growing between the two divided nations. So we had what we call Red Cross volunteers from South Korea. They were actually allowed to travel into North Korean territory to plant trees with North Korean Red Cross volunteers. And the idea was also to have tree planting experts from South Korea to engage with the North Korean counterparts. However, and as probably all of the attendees know, there was a nuclear test in 2005 that put a, let's say, a brutal halt to this project. But even though we managed to have the two Korean national societies to work together at least for a couple of years. The two Korean Red Crosses have also been very much involved in what we call the inter-Korean dialogue. At times of a political stalemate and a tough political climate, there has been also both unofficial and official dialogue between the two Korean Red Crosses. They even have had hotlines, telephones where they can call each other. And as you've probably also seen from the media, there have been arranged a series of what they call family reunions, probably not reunions as we would like to or family reunions in the sense that there were families separated in the Korean War that were allowed to meet both physically but also on video on more than 20 occasions. And these sessions and family reunions has been arranged by the two Korean Red Crosses. The last one was back in 2018, and after that we haven't been able to arrange for more of these family reunions. Unfortunately, as the generation still has been or have those who were separated during the Korean War are of course getting older and older, and the people who hasn't been able to meet with their loved ones and families are getting older and older. It's critical that we are able to arrange for further of these family reunions. But again, the current political climate doesn't allow for any of these type of family reunions. All right. We as I mentioned, we have been, let's say, developing our collaboration with the North Korean Red Cross. It's a Red Cross organization organized on more or less the same idea as other Red Crosses as we know it, the Norwegian Red Cross, the Swedish Red Cross, the British Red Cross, and the North Korean Red Cross are also based on the same values as we are. We are neutral, independent, but I have to in this fora also to admit that as you all know, nothing in North Korea is independent from the government. So we have to acknowledge that the North Korean Red Cross is very much embedded in the North Korean government structure, and of course we can't really claim that either the organization or the volunteers that is working with the North Korean Red Cross are volunteers in the sense that we know it in other countries. On the other hand, it's a massive, let's say, resource that they have, being able to mobilize thousands of people, whether it comes to health projects, to tree planting, for rescue operation in case of disasters, where the North Korean Red Cross is very much active as the country experiences floodings, droughts, and other types of disaster on an annual basis, and several disasters on an annual basis. Last ones were last year, where 3 typhoons hit the country, also affecting the food situation to a large extent. That is at least something about how we're working and our counterpart, the North Korean Red Cross. But I have to say that, also on a personal note, that the personal interaction with our, I would say, friends also and colleagues in the North Korean Red Cross is essential for how we can proceed and how we can be successful. We as part of our cooperation, we normally invite also North Koreans from the North Korean Red Cross to Norway. We meet at least once a year, except for the last year where the COVID put a stop to meeting physically. But we meet normally in normal times at least once a year, either in Norway, Sweden, or in China, or wherever. And we also try to have North Korean Red Cross staff to work with International Red Cross in other countries, and they have been able to do so on several occasions, both in Geneva, in Asia, and in Africa, doing a great job also for the Red Cross. And we believe that these kind of experiences can also bring added value when they are traveling back to North Korea with some new ideas, some new perspectives, and we appreciate that when they come back, that they share something from their, let's say, international missions. And we also believe that what they learn have at least changed some of their perspectives on how the world looks like in a state-controlled society as North Korea is. So at least we try to engage also on a, how to say it, personal level. I also do have had North Koreans in my house several times to show them how it is, how we use the internet, how we live. Not at least, as probably most of you know, we are not allowed to come into a North Korean home, even though some of my friends tell that they would like to do so, but it's not, how they put it, it's not encouraged by the government. So when they come here, we invite them home for dinner. They can meet with our children, see how we live. And we believe that this is part of also strengthening the cooperation with them, as regular communication with our counterparts or colleagues in the North Korean Red Cross is very much limited. They have one email address that we can use, but again, as you know, the intelligence is of course onto that one, so we have to be careful. So it's much better to meet outside of the country to engage and meet in person. I'm not sure how I am time-wise, Steinar, but if you allow for a couple of more minutes, I'm not sure. You're on mute.
Maybe 1 minute. I think around 11 minutes you have used.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I will try to be quick. I will just say, and maybe also you have been talking also with Sven Erik Johansson in the Swedish Pentecostal mission. I would say that he is one of my role models, actually, how he has been working in North Korea. First and foremost, working for a long time, being in the country on long missions, and to engage and to humanize North Koreans, and not to present a tabloid media picture of the regular North Korean. As I've learned working with North Korea for almost 20 years, is that they are, and this is of course goes without saying, but I say it anyways, that they are humans. They are people with families, have feelings, and they are certainly not robots being brainwashed. So so I just want to mention that when we engage with North Koreans, we have to humanize them to a larger extent and to try to engage as much as possible. So thank you. I will just leave it there, and I guess there are questions and follow-up questions.
Yeah, thank you, Torben. You mentioned Sven-Erik Johansson. I think that is the one that is doing this project with potatoes, isn't it? Growing potatoes. Actually, we recommended to contact him if he wanted to be a part of the program. We didn't come to doing that, but he was one of those that were recommended to take part in our webinar. So I know about him. So anyway, thank you very much for your sharing. Very interesting about how you experienced people and cooperation between Red Cross, North and South Korea. As mentioned, I do have more questions, but before we come to them, I would like to say something about our involvement in Korea. Why are we involved with Korea and the process about unification? So some people may wonder why we in the UPF organize many webinars on Korea. So one answer is that both the founders of UPF, Universal Peace Federation, Dr. and Mrs. Moon, are both born in North Korea. So when the Korean War broke out, they had to leave North Korea as refugees. Therefore, both of them, from a personal interest and also in the interest of their nation, they have always been very concerned about the future of their homeland. Dr. Mo knew very well the reality of the regime in North Korea. After spending almost 3 years in one of its labor camps, that was before 1950, before the Korean War broke out. In addition, he always pointed out that a state that denies God and forbids religious freedom will have no future in the long run. So with this background and this understanding, it looked less likely that he would be able to contribute to reconciliation between North and South, not to say to be welcome in North Korea again. So with such views, he was even declared an enemy of North Korea, and North Korea even tried to assassinate him. As a response to a possible invasion from North Korea, Dr. Moon organized in 1975 a large rally for freedom in Seoul in order to gather South Koreans against the threats from the North. Because this was the year when the large tunnels from North to South were discovered under the border at the 38th parallel. But then, after 40 years of exile, since 1950 to 1990, Dr. Moon felt the time had come for a reconciliation, and efforts were made to set up a meeting with North Korean authorities. This was, of course, not easy to organize, but miraculously and eventually, North Korean authorities forwarded him a formal invitation. So the meeting did take place with the authorities and even Kim Il-sung in November 1991, now 30 years ago. The meeting itself was also rather spectacular, I will say, in the way that Dr. Moon was very direct about his views of the Juche ideology, leaving no doubt about his opinion. And we know that even taking down a poster in North Korea is risky, not to mention openly criticizing the official ideology. But that is what Dr. Moon did. So it was a tense situation. However, the most important thing and what turned the meeting into a success was that he also reached out his hand at the same time with an invitation to cooperation. He was not there to make enemies, but to make friends and initiate cooperation. And so he offered his services to Kim Il-sung towards that end. And Kim Il-sung and his officials observed everything. And the miracle is that the ice of enmity between them melted. Kim Il-sung responded warmly, and Dr. Moon's generosity had touched Kim Il-sung's heart to such a degree that the effect of this meeting has lasted through 3 generations, through his 2 sons up to this day. Even though Dr. Moon passed away in 2012, his wife, Dr. Hak Jahan, has a standing invitation to visit North Korea. Something I'm sure will happen when the time and all circumstances are ripe. So Dr. Moon did not come to North Korea as a politician. He has never been a politician, but as a private person and religious leader. In the end, this meeting turned out to be like a meeting between friends with many common interests. They spoke about food, the nation, hunting, fishing, and other things, anything else than politics. So it's interesting. It's an interesting case that shows that there are other ways contributing to peace than only politics. It's like a track to diplomacy. So about the result of the meeting, this meeting opened up many doors that have been locked for a long time. So as a result, North Korea decided to stop the annual anti-American propaganda month in June and July. It also opened up for an agreement with the International Atomic Energy Agency for inspection of nuclear plants. And direct flights between North and South for separated families were also organized. And a peace center were built in Pyongyang. It was completed in 2007. And the cooperation of automobile production began, that is the Pyonghwa Motor, and several cultural exchanges were done. The first one in 1998, when the Little Angels Children's Folk Ballet visited North Korea. And finally, after the passing of Dr. Moon, he received an award post-mortem from the North Korean government as a National Reunification Award. So in these days, there is a very relevant question to ask: how will Korea develop in the time to come? Because now we have a new president in the United States. What will this mean for further development in Korea? And there is a new mayor since April in both Seoul and Busan. These are very significant political positions. How will this affect the relationship between North and South? And there will be a new president in South Korea next year. So which way will that take the dialogue? So which way will the tide flow? That's a question. And from our part, with the hope for and in support of a positive development in Korea, UPF has launched what we call a Think Tank 2022, consisting of experts from many fields that will share advice and experiences on how a peaceful development can take place. During the last months, many webinars have taken place on different continents, involving politicians, religious leaders, academicians, researchers, media people, artists, business leaders, and more. And this evening we are happy to listen to experiences from humanitarian aid area. So finally, I also want to mention that UPF Norway, in cooperation with our European UPF chapters, also organized a humanitarian project in cooperation with the Red Cross Society of North Korea a few years back, where we contributed with donating medical equipment to a new children's hospital in Pyongyang. The hospital sent us a wish list, and in cooperation with a large hospital in Norway, that is Ahus, we were able to send several shipments of second-hand medical equipment to the North Korean hospital. The Norwegian hospital were very happy to donate. They thought it was very meaningful, and the North Korean hospital were very happy to receive it. So with these words about the UPF's involvement in North Korea, I like to go on with some questions and conversations between us. So first I have some questions directed to each speaker, and then I have some questions that is relevant to both of you. And Roald, you was the first speaker, so I have a couple of questions to you. So you are representing Evangelical Orient Mission. As far as I understood, it's an American-based organization, or do you have also contacts? Is it also Christians from South Korea, or basically from America?
Well, yeah, just a quick historic background here. The Evangelical Orient Mission is an old China mission, actually, from 1889, with the English missionary James Hudson Taylor, who visited Norway in 1889 and started, they called Den Norske Kina Mission, the Norwegian China Mission. So this is the background. In the 1950s, all the missionaries were thrown out of China. So our missionaries moved to Japan, and then we sort of increased our geographical area. So 2011 we started to work also in North Korea, because of one of the board members were involved in that, and that was the guy Øyvind Dovland, as you saw the picture there. So this is the background. So we are not actually American. It used to be integrated part of China Inland Mission, but now it's a small Norwegian organization only. But we are cooperating with the Christian Friends of Korea, as I showed you this this logo here. So there's in North Korea we are much identified as Christian Friends of Korea. It was very interesting you mentioned Sven Erik, because he worked for us for quite a number of years. So one of some of the really advanced greenhouses that you saw in my PowerPoint presentation is actually sort of the initiator was Sven Erik, and he lived in Pyongyang for almost 10 years, and he's been very he's the kind of guy who really breaks down enemy images all over the world, I would say. So thank you for mentioning him.
Another thing, I think you mentioned it about your organization, of course, is a Christian organization. North Korea is definitely not a Christian or a religious state. So how can you work there?
Yeah,
Basically, Yeah, you cannot evangelize, but you can do humanitarian.
No, of course, we cannot evangelize in any way, but we kind of feel that strongly that we present a Christian testimony when we give people food and give people help out with the clean drinking water and break down enemy images. So it's even though we cannot sort of speak the whole Christian message to the people, we try to live it out, as we call it, diagonal or humanitarian work. I also see I got some question on the chat. Did you see that on the chat here? So maybe I could answer that. That's also with the same type of question. I think Ole Thoresen asked here if we get approached by Christians in North Korea. And I'd just like to show you a picture here, since we are able to share. There are 3 churches in Pyongyang, and we always go to one of the churches. And here you see the picture here from the church choir. And we are able also to give short greeting when we are in the church there. Now I only get there you are. This is Heidi Linton. She is the leader of Christian Friends of Korea. She is half Norwegian, by the way. Both 3 of her grandparents are Norwegians. So anyway, we are able to have contact with Christians. We don't know exactly if these churches are how to say real active Christians anyway, but I think sometimes they like to present a picture that they have religious freedom. But if you only have 3 churches on 25 million people, you really there's not that much possibility to go to church. But we believe that there are many Christians, and in the past, before the Korean War, there was a lot of Christians in North Korea. And I've been in contact with the churches in Russia, Vladivostok, for instance, that was planted by Korean missionaries from Pyongyang. That's interesting also. So there is a Christian background there, and but there has been quite a heavy persecution of Christians in North Korea.
Sure.
We all know about that. So that's why we cannot, when we are a humanitarian organization, we cannot meet with Christians there, except from this official church. So we have to be very careful.
Thank you.
I can mention one little thing also, because we've tried to take opportunities to share what we believe in, and I invited the North Korean UN delegation to a lunch in the Norwegian Seamen's Church in New York, and it is just very close by to where they have their office. So they accepted the invitation. They came to have a lunch with us there, and I think that was the first time they ever were in a church. So I think all this kind of contact, we believe, is very positive.
Thank you, Roald, for showing these pictures. I wasn't aware of that you have these churches actually there, but you proved it through your photo. Yeah, I do have a couple of questions to Torben, because you are working with Red Cross, and of course I think you answered a few questions already. I was wondering about in our nations, Red Cross is a private independent organization, but I suppose that the Red Cross Society of North Korea do report to the government, or in some way is tied up with the government. That's right, I suppose.
Yeah, I have to say yes, absolutely. We do know that there is a very close relation between the DPRK Red Cross and the government, obviously. We also see that several of their staff is also recruited from, I would say, high-ranking families, serving also abroad. So, and as you all is aware, there is nothing that you can call, let's say, private or independent in North Korea as such. I would also claim not even the churches, naturally. So yes, obviously. However, I would like also to emphasize that even though it's we acknowledge that also the Red Cross is part of the government structure, but we still believe that they play a significant humanitarian role, as they are our, let's say, gateway to the communities outside of several places in the country, that allows for humanitarian support that would not be there if we didn't have a Red Cross. So as we can't work in North Korea without having a Red Cross, as it's their own country and they decide actually also what they want to do. So our role is to support the North Korean Red Cross in their humanitarian activities. But again, coming back to your question, no, it's nothing as independent or so yeah, that's correct.
Will you say that the Red Cross Society of North Korea is the largest humanitarian organization in North Korea?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely. I have to say that I'm not aware of a wide range of other humanitarian organizations, but I know that the DPRK Red Cross is the preferred, as they call it, the humanitarian implementer by the government. It's obviously very important. They have a quite high media profile in North Korea also. Again, state controlled, so the government tend to lift up what the Red Cross is doing, especially in as I mentioned also in my introduction, in natural disasters and how they respond in case of an emergency. But they're also quite visible on, for instance, the Red Cross Day, which happens on the 8th of May, and other celebrations. The North Korean Red Cross is an important actor, definitely. So yeah.
Yeah. Also, when you run projects there, is it funded from the Norwegian side, I mean, with the funds and resources, or is it like a joint project that you are doing with North Korean Red Cross?
Yeah, it's a pity that the Norwegian Minister of Foreign Affairs is not here, but I can praise them anyway. This is not just words, but and we are very pleased that the Norwegian government have been so persistent in supporting North Korea for more than 20 years. And especially when we compare with other countries who tends to follow the political developments, and so we see that the funding from other countries has been decreasing the last few years, while the Norwegian support has been very stable. So we are very happy that they continue to see that, or that the focus of the Norwegian government is that the humanitarian needs should be in the focus, and not the, let's say, ups and downs of the political developments, which has been going from top to bottom in only a few years. So we're very happy with the collaboration with the Norwegian Minister of Foreign Affairs on North Korea in particular. Yes.
Wonderful. Glad to hear that the Norwegian government is quite stable and supporting, in spite of the different political parties that is running our country. So I was also quite interested to hear about that you had the visitors from North Korea to Norway, even visiting your home. do you feel that it was a culture shock for them to come from North Korea to our culture in Norway?
Yeah, I would, for some of them, of course, they never come as, let's say, they always come in pairs or 4 people, so they can, let's say, watch each other while they're visiting. So they're, I have to say, they're a bit, of course, a bit careful of what they are saying, but obviously they are very much interested in how we are living, and I would say also very surprising questions are coming from them on how we are building our houses, just to mention a few examples, or taking them around, showing them the city. I live in a town called Fredrikstad, for international listeners, a city of 80,000 people, and I remember once there's a prison for female inmates. I showed them, and this was, at least for them, a big shock, as they didn't have prisons officially in North Korea. So it's a quite interesting to at least to listen to their questions, what kind of perspective they have on the world, and what is not so much. Things that are very obvious to us is not so obvious to them. It's my let's say conclusion, but it's very nice to experience them in such a setting, serving them potatoes and salmon in a Norwegian home, and also when I had smaller children, handing over some toys to their children, which they mention every time when I come to North Korea, that they still have these toys. So this is, I think this is also an important part of the work, to have these personal relationships.
Interesting to hear. You are kind of lucky to have this experience. There are not so many Norwegians that have North Koreans visiting their homes. So I do have some questions that goes to both of you, because how do North Korea feel about having to receive humanitarian aid? I mean, are they grateful, or are they a little bit embarrassed because they are in a situation where they need to get help from abroad? I mean, when you think about the ideology, is the Jew ideology that has to do with managing everything by themselves. But obviously they cannot do that always. They are in need of help from abroad. So how do you think that the country think about that? Are they grateful? Are they a little bit embarrassed, or how do you feel?
I think that's an excellent question, and I've only been there 4 times, so I think Torben is the main person to answer this question also. But my honest impression, because we visit like 3 or 4 hospitals every day when we are there, and we meet with the director of the hospital, and then they are, some of them are extremely grateful. I remember especially one time when we had implemented a water system there, that they have a clean drinking water in the hospital, and we said social statistics that the number of diarrhea went down to low level, and instead of so that's sometimes just to get clean drinking water is very, very important. And so they were kind of overwhelmed by gratefulness. I have never had this, let's say, embarrassing feeling that they feel embarrassed about things, but I think it's obvious that they might deep inside they do, and I think it has a lot to do to our how do you say that, holding our
Attitude.
attitude, of course,
Yeah.
to them, that we don't feel, that we don't kind of communicate that we are from a rich society that sort of
Right.
have or look down on them in any way. So this is very important. I think maybe Torben, when you have this counterpart, you have more like equal. You have Red Cross in, so maybe you can comment also on this.
As you said, well, this is a very, very interesting question, and we have been debating this back and forth several times, naturally. We know that the support is very much appreciated, both by the counterparts, but not at least, as also the Wally is mentioning, the actual, what we call is beneficiaries, who are receiving either clean water or medicine or food. But as you all know, let's say North Korean official perspective is that they are not a underdeveloped country, as comparing, for instance, with countries in Africa. They are not. Their perspective is not that they are in a dire situation because of external factors, not of lack of let's say development as such. And to some extent, they are right. They have been an industrial country only 30-40 years back, and after that, everything went backwards and sideways. So in a sense, they're right, but it's a paradox that they are supposed to be self-sustained, but they are not able to be that, actually. But again, there have been also discussions internally with also our counterparts that we should be more development focused and less humanitarian focused, as this is putting as long as we are humanitarian focused, it's putting a kind of stamp on the country. And I think the United Nations experienced this in particular this year, as they on an annual basis is having a what they call it, a humanitarian response plan, launched on the internet, and for this year they were not allowed to do so, as they don't want to be categorized as a underdeveloped country. But I also believe that this kind of discussion follow also the political signals from the top, whether they should acknowledge that there is a huge humanitarian need in the country. But again, reading signals from Pyongyang is not always easy. So yeah, that was a long answer, but
yeah. There is another thing I was thinking about, maybe related to what we are talking about, but North Korea and North Koreans, they are kind of intelligent people, and they make atomic bombs. They have good scientists, and they have high technology in that field, that area. So I'm wondering, when they can make atomic bombs and such good weapons, why don't they put more efforts into developing agriculture and that side of the country? I mean, you showed project about water pumps and such things. That's kind of low technology. Atomic bombs is high tech. So I thought maybe it's a good idea to use more resources into the agricultural area. Do you have some thoughts about that?
Yeah, of course, it's extremely sad situation, because part of the poverty in North Korea is because of the embargo for many years, and the embargo is because they developed nuclear weapons. So it's a very simple solution to it, you know, if they just stop with a nuclear weapon. But it's it's a very sad situation, of course.
But I was thinking, when it comes to such things as greenhouse, water pumps, growing potatoes, Isn't this something that the North Korean people could manage? But I don't know if they lack funds, knowledge, or is a lack of priority, or is it because of the external sanctions? Maybe it's a combination.
Yeah, of course, and it's a matter of priority for the government to be blunt about it. And Roald also has probably some experience with this, and as I mentioned, there is often a discussion with our North Korean counterparts in terms of, because they normally they don't consider themselves as I mentioned, an underdeveloped country. So when we are discussing, for instance, various type of projects, they want very sophisticated equipment. Equipment that requires, for instance, electricity and computers, and but at the end of the day, what they need, at least at this stage where they are, for instance, in agriculture, is very basic type of, for instance, greenhouses, not high-tech modern greenhouses with electrical irrigation and all these things, as the electricity is lacking in most part of the countries. It's a paradox with wanting to be something that they are not currently, because of course producing potatoes and running agriculture as we did in Norway 100 years ago is not the image that they don't want to portray themselves with in 2021, definitely. So but again, but we also have to realize that even though if North Korea produced the best harvest ever, they would not be able to sustain enough food for their people. So currently they need international humanitarian support, either from those who are present here and from others to actually produce enough food, for instance, for their population.
There's another thing which I think makes the situation difficult. As far as I have understand, they have basically kicked out many foreign organizations that are doing projects now since the beginning of the year. I suppose that includes your projects there. And why do they do that? They are in need of supplies, but then they kick out organizations that are helping them. Is that because of they are afraid of COVID-19, or is it a political protest because the negotiations between North and South and United States broke down? What do you think? Why do they close the border?
Well, I'm quite sure it's all about COVID-19, because they need to be so careful because of the general health situation in the country are quite low, and then the COVID-19 would hit very, very hard, and so they try to avoid it, and they claim that they have no COVID-19 there, but I heard that they have also asked for vaccines. I don't know if you know about this, Torben, but that's what I heard. So that is kind of a contradiction. So I think that. So I think the obvious reason now is because of COVID-19, but before that, it was the embargo situation. So then, for instance, our American cooperative organization, the Christian Friends of Korea, they were not able to do anything because of the embargo, and that was imposed by the American government. But then we also work with other organizations in the meantime. So there have been many organizations operative until COVID-19.
Right.
I believe it's actually, as you mentioned, Steinar, a mix of both. I think it's a mix of both. Both good reasons to fear COVID and an outbreak or a major outbreak in DPRK would be devastating. As we know, the health system is under resourced. But I believe also there might be also a political interest to reduce the international presence using COVID-19 as an excuse to do so, as we had staff from the International Red Cross in Pyongyang until December last year. But again, they were just sitting idle in Pyongyang, not being able to travel outside of the city or hardly outside of the international area in Pyongyang. Even though they had been in quarantine for, I would say, a year inside the country, they were not allowed to do anything. And at the end of the day, it was not, I would not say not safe to have staff in the country anymore. For instance, if they had a serious health situation, they had to be evacuated to another country. And we know that from other, for instance, the Russian embassy had some incidents where people were suffering from severe health problems, and it took 3 weeks before they were allowed to leave the country. So it's not safe anymore to have staff in the country, as there are no flights out of the country, and you have to leave by land, and a very cumbersome process to leave the country. So we're now working hard to have people in, and talking about, and currently they don't allow anyone in, even not fully vaccinated people or with long quarantines. So we have no signals of them letting international staff in again. So there are only a few remaining from a few embassies. I mentioned the Russians and a few other embassies, but for instance, the Swedish, the British, they left the country more than a year ago. So currently it's a bit of a guessing game what the North Korean, when the North Koreans will allow any foreigners back into the country. And that's only the last thing from me. Well, the DPRK has also applied for vaccines through the COVAX, and they will receive at some point 1.8 million doses. And I say at some point of time, because there have been several delays. The last reports is that they will receive these doses this fall. But again, we really don't know what will happen. And 1.8 million doses is also very limited with a population of 26 million people. So I'm not too optimistic that they will allow foreigners in even not in 2022. I'm not sure.
Right. In this situation where you are not allowed to be there, I suppose North Koreans are taking care of the projects and doing the best with the greenhouses, etc. But is it possible for you to have, do you have an email connection? Can you communicate with the staff that is running the projects there via email? In case they have questions about something, you have this kind of connection?
Yeah, so for the Red Cross, we still have an office for the International Red Cross in Pyongyang, staffed by local staff, North Koreans, working for the International Red Cross. And we also have a possibility to communicate directly with the North Korean Red Cross through this one email I mentioned. We can, let's say, send through, for instance, formal letters. But it's, so we have some kind of direct communication possibility, but I have to say it's rather limited, certainly. But it's possible.
Do you have connection, Roald?
Yes, there is a small organization or a farm up in the economical area that's called Rajin, or Rason, in the city of Rajin. There's a foreign couple that actually is living there, has been there all the time, but they are very limited. It's very difficult to talk to them. I have not talked to them myself, but they have been able to do some project of buying soybeans, producing soy meat, and distribute to vulnerable groups of people in the area. So we have been able to finance 110 tons of soy meat and rice. This is the only project we have been capable of doing this year. Well, actually, we have set up on greenhouse also that was set up in 20th of May, was finished, but we don't know, we can't confirm it. We only have pictures. We have received pictures from inside, but it's very, very limited contact.
Yeah.
Interesting, Torben. Do you think Red Cross will be involved in the vaccination whenever that is possible?
Actually, we have also been asking that question, and just recently we were informed that they will have a role both in the actual vaccination, we believe, and also in supporting the government in the vaccine rollout, informing people that it's safe, and all these things we know here outside of Korea, how also humanitarian organizations are supporting the vaccine efforts. So they will have a role.
But you don't think it will be possible to visit even in 2022? That's your prediction?
Yeah, that's my personal prediction. I haven't been being surprised by North Korea. So, but as long as if there is progress, hopefully in the vaccination rollout in the country, there might be changes. But just to mention that what we are preparing for now is to send in humanitarian goods and not people as soon as there is an opportunity. And as we understand, North Koreans are building these disinfection centers along the Chinese border that might allow for humanitarian support to come in, hopefully this year.
Yeah, actually we do have a couple of questions that we want to take from the audience, but before that, our topic was also about how humanitarian projects can contribute to peace, development, and opening North Korea to the nations around, surrounding nations. I think you touched a little bit upon that, but maybe you can...
Maybe I could just mention a few things from the past. I think the horrible disaster was in the late 90s, when hundreds of thousands of people died from starvation. Almost maybe somewhere between 1 and 3 million people died. We don't know for sure. But after that, North Korea opened up to the rest of the world, and that was why this organization, Christian Friends of Korea, was sort of formed, and they were able to access the country. And since many of them spoke Korean language, they were very valuable people in distributing food. They had, I think, 3 provinces where they organized the distribution of basic foods. So maybe that's a hope for the near future now also, that the situation is quite desperate, and then they will have to open up and hope that we can come in. And this was a time when friendship was built. I have very touching images from these pictures and videos from all this project here. So actually it's possible. One other thing I like to mention is Sven Erik, that we already have mentioned, that lived there for 10 years. It's amazing. He was a friendship builder. And one very touching moment was when he came back to a place where he helped them produce potato, one collective farm that helped them produce potato. And it took years to persuade them to the potatoes is very valuable instead of rice. It's more nutritious than rice. So he came back 10 years later on a trip that we had with him, and then he had no contact in between. And then those 10 years they have produced 800 tons of how do you call sette potato? What do you call that? Yeah, well, you know,
seed potatoes, maybe.
Potatoes, yeah. Potatoes. And it was very emotional when he came back there to this collective farm. Yeah. And so let's hope for the future that these projects could really start over again. And
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. What do you think, Torben? I think you mentioned that creates friendship and can contribute to development.
Yeah, I believe so. Just repeating myself, but try to engage, and when you engage, to treat them like human beings, and they are very curious about. And we have probably been the same if we have been, let's say, kept in a relatively dark room for a long time. So they are very curious about how we are living our lives, how we not only on the project, but how we live our lives outside of North Korea, and to meet them with an open mind, not at least, as they are part of a very different society than we are. So what we try is to expose them to how we are living, as they are very keen to expose us to how they are living when we visit their country. So we're trying to do it the same way, and to actually, because it's also very much about trust building, and we have learned that the Norwegians and Scandinavians in particular, we are not, let's say, even though we were very well, according to them, on the wrong side during the Korean War, we are still considered a peaceful part of the world without any political ambitions, and they want to be our friends. They have emphasized that for many times. So for them for instance, to visit Norway is not considered that politicized. So it's definitely an opportunity, and if your organizations are able to invite, of course it's a matter also of funding, because we normally pay for the North Koreans to come here. But if you have the opportunity, that is I would say a golden opportunity to have a long-term also friendship with these Koreans.
I just mention two things, because it's one incident that we were invited to the opera, the Pyongyang Opera. I don't know if you've been there, Torben, but it was an incredible experience. That's Sven Erik, that you get in on such a high level that even a small organizations as ourselves get in on a high level. And one time we met with the Minister of Health also, so that's quite amazing how we are able to sort of make friends with people on top level. And I like to mention also one thing, that I was informant of a PhD once. A lady from Hong Kong was writing about listed all the organizations, NGOs that were active in North Korea, and it was more than 200. Have you seen that PhD, Torben? Or no? I have it available, but it's a whole long list. And well, she said that it was 14 of them that were really long-term dedicated. So there is a lot of opportunities in North Korea. And you mentioned the Swedish people and also the Swiss people. We also have cooperation with Swiss government, also giving some money for humanitarian aid.
Exactly.
And I think actually Norwegian government is giving very, very small amount. Isn't that right, Torben, compared to the whole budget of that is not really, a Red Cross gets something and UN gets something, but it's quite small. So I would really like next time you should invite the Foreign Affairs Office also that you try this.
Yeah, they were invited. It wasn't able to this time, but they of course were considered. Anyway, we are coming to the end.
Thank you.
So I think it's exactly 1930. So right now. So I don't know if you have a final comment or what impressed you the most, or what surprised you the most, or what disappointed you the most in North Korea. Just a final little question, comment.
Yeah, finally, just
Very
thank you.
very short.
Yeah, very short. Just thank you for being part of this organization, and good luck to all the work you're doing. And also, what I've seen in the small way I've been involved for 10 years now, it's that the opportunities are much bigger than we thought. And I think Torben and Red Cross is an example of that also.
Mm.
Just,
Yeah, thank you.
just also very quick from my side. I am, of course, you're representing Christian organizations, and I was also of the impression that the access for Christians were hardly or not possible in North Korea. But staying at the same hotels on many occasions, I met also representatives of other Christian organizations on and a range of different type of organizations. So I understand if there is a will, there is a way also inside North Korea. So
Exactly.
you can definitely engage with North Koreans, even with the cross and yeah, also representing the values you are representing. So and it's great to learn that there are smaller organizations also engaging with North Korea. So even though North Korea is not on the headlines in the media on a daily basis and drowning in other crises around the world.
Right. Interesting what you said. Actually, our founder used to say that where there is a will, there is a way, especially if it's God's will, he used to say. So we need to have hope and think that there is a bright future, even for North Korea, and that reunification can take place sooner rather than later. So by this, I want to give thanks to the participants. I'm very happy that you could take part. I want to thank both of you, Roald Føreland and Torben Bjørke Henriksen, for participating in this webinar, and thank you for your taking time to share with us both about your experiences from the country that few of us have visited. And you gave a very interesting insight into your projects and your experiences with the North Korean culture and people. And I think it gives a complementary picture to what we usually see in the media. So thank you again, and thanks to the audience that has followed the webinar, and thanks to our technical staff. Okay, then I have to say thank you very much, and I wish you a good evening and a nice summer, good summer. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you. Bye.